Your overhead story channel, let's go listening.
I wasn't supposed to be home until the next evening. The conference ended early. Some executive had an emergency back in D.C., and half the panel schedule got reshuffled. Instead of K*ling time at the hotel, I caught the 3:10 train and drove the last leg back home. I didn't call or text her. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe even make dinner. I used to like surprising her. But the second I stepped into the house, something was off. It was a small thing at first, just the smell. The house had this unfamiliar scent floating around. Not bad, just different. Like cologne I'd never worn and a candle she never bought. Subtle, like a note out of place in a song you've heard 1,000 times. Then I saw them. Near the door, half tucked under the bench. A pair of sneakers. Black. A little scuffed up. Size 11 maybe. Not hers, obviously. Not mine either. My brain tried to make it logical, something innocent. But it couldn't land on anything that felt true. Not with the laces still loosely tied. Like someone slipped out of them quickly. I stood there for a long second, luggage still in hand. You'd be amazed how much noise your heart makes when the world goes quiet. I moved through the entryway slowly, like walking into a scene I didn't want to be in. Then I saw the wine glasses. 2 of them on the kitchen island. Next to the half-emptied bottle of red we'd opened on our anniversary last year and never touched since. One glass was stained with a dark plum lipstick. The other, a lighter, coral pink smear on the rim. 2 different shades, neither of which she wears. Not unless something's changed while I was gone. The glasses weren't cleaned up or rinsed out, just sitting there like they'd been abandoned quickly. One with a fingerprint smudged along the bowl. That fingerprint was small. Not mine. Her hand always left prints higher up on the glass. I didn't touch them. Didn't need to. The story was already trying to write itself. Then came a sound upstairs, soft, deliberate. The unmistakable click of a bathroom door shutting. It wasn't slammed, just intentional, measured, like someone trying not to be heard, and failing. And then, silence. I stayed still, waited, didn't call her name. A few seconds later, she appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a gray towel like she'd just gotten out of the shower. Her hair was damp, hanging down her shoulders. She didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first red flag. "Oh," she said, her voice a little too bright. "You're home early." "Yeah," I replied, setting down my bag gently by the wall. Conference ended sooner than planned. She walked down slowly, keeping one hand on the banister. I watched her eyes as she moved. She clocked the sneakers instantly. Barely glanced, but I saw it. Then her expression flattened back into something unreadable. "They're my brothers," she said before I could open my mouth. "He stopped by earlier, just for a bit." I just nodded. "Didn't know he was in town." "He was passing through," she added quickly. "Didn't even stay for dinner. We just caught up for a little." Her voice cracked slightly on the word caught. I said nothing. She made her way to the kitchen, paused when she saw the glasses, and scooped them up like it was nothing. No explanation, no mention of the lipstick. She carried them to the sink, turned on the faucet, and began rinsing them with a kind of mechanical precision. That's when I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Not like it had slipped off, it was intentional. The faint tan line on her finger told me all I needed to know. She'd taken it off for long enough for the skin underneath to forget it belonged there. She caught me looking and said, "It was feeling tight. I think I've been retaining water. Stress, maybe." "Since when?" I asked. She shrugged. "Couple weeks." "You didn't mention it." "I didn't think it mattered," she said, without turning from the sink. The moment dragged out. Water running. Her back to me trying not to shake. We had dinner that night, sort of. She reheated something from the fridge and pushed food around her plate. The conversation was light, too light. She asked questions about the trip like she was checking boxes on a form. Smiled in the wrong places. Laughed once, but not with her eyes. The phone stayed next to her the whole evening. Screen down. She didn't even touch it unless she thought I wasn't looking. When she did check it, she tilted it away from me, her shoulders tensing. When I asked her if everything was okay, she smiled again. Rehearsed this time, like a line she'd practiced in front of a mirror. "I'm just tired," she said. "I've been thinking a lot." "About what?" "About us," she answered, not meeting my eyes. "Things feel different. I don't know. I think I need space to figure things out." And then, just like that, she stood up, walked to the bedroom, and left me there. No fight, no questions, no tears, just a quiet, polite withdrawal, like someone excusing themselves from a dinner party they didn't want to be at in the first place. I sat in the kitchen alone, listening to the faint sound of drawers opening and closing upstairs. The house felt suddenly unfamiliar. Or maybe it was me that didn't belong anymore. Later that night, I walked past the bedroom. She was curled on the edge of the bed, her back to me. Her phone still face down on the nightstand, plugged in. I thought about picking it up. Thought about asking who had really been here. But I didn't, because deep down I already knew. It wasn't about the sneakers. It wasn't about the lipstick. It wasn't even about the towel or the missing ring. It was the silence. The calm. The way she looked at me like she had already moved on, and this was just the scene she had to act out before closing the curtain. I went to the guest room that night, not out of anger, just preservation. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through 100 scenarios, each one worse than the last. And in every single one of them, I was the last to know. I didn't sleep that night, maybe dozed off for half an hour tops, but nothing real. My mind was a projector running old footage in reverse, making me question every look, every delay, every offhand comment from the past year. It's strange how your memory changes shape when something finally breaks. Things you used to shrug off suddenly feel razor sharp, and you start seeing patterns where before there were only coincidences. She told me once she was working on a late deadline, some end-of-quarter strategy doc she and her team were building together. That was in November. She came home just before midnight, said she'd eaten already and didn't want to warm anything up. Her hair was curled, even though she usually wore it up on long work days. I kissed her cheek. It was colder than I remembered. There was another time, probably February, when she said she'd be out of town for a weekend leadership retreat. She packed light, didn't take her usual neck pillow or that ratty hoodie she always wore to sleep. When I asked why, she said it was more of a professional thing, not the kind of trip for loungewear. I remembered thinking it was odd at the time but chalked it up to office culture being weird. She didn't FaceTime me once that weekend, just sent a few texts here and there. Later I checked her team's LinkedIn page, and not one person had posted about it. No photos, no mention, just nothing. Back then I didn't see it. Now all I saw were gaps in the story, big enough to drive a lie through. The next morning, she acted like everything was fine. Made coffee. Asked me about the train ride back. Sat across from me in the kitchen with a perfectly neutral expression. As if the night before hadn't happened. As if that pair of sneakers hadn't existed. She wore her ring again too. Just slipped it back on, no explanation. I didn't bring it up. Couldn't. Instead, I started pulling threads quietly. I watched more closely. Not just the big things, but the little tells. She kept her phone screen tilted when she scrolled, even when we were sitting shoulder to shoulder on the couch. Notifications were off. The lock screen was blank. Her passcode changed. I noticed because I'd once known it without asking. Now when I glanced at her entering it, it was different. Longer. Maybe alphanumeric. She also started doing something new. Laughing at her phone. Not just smirking or chuckling, but laughing in that soft, private way she used to reserve for inside jokes between us. I'd ask what was funny, and she'd just wave it off. "Oh, it's nothing," or "just something from work." That answer started wearing thin fast. Dinner changed too. Not what we ate, but how we ate. She used to wait for me if I was running late. Used to text me when she was heading home, asking if I wanted anything. Lately, I'd walk in and find the kitchen clean, dishwasher running, the scent of takeout already fading. She'd be upstairs, sometimes already in pajamas, lights off in the bedroom, scrolling her phone in the glow of silence. I stopped being part of her rhythm, and that's when the name started creeping in. Jake came up casually at first. Something about a new hire on her team who was super sharp and had really creative ideas. I remember being glad she had someone competent to lean on. The way she described him sounded professional, normal. Then I heard the name again, this time in a different tone. We were on the patio one night, glass of wine each, talking about her project setbacks. She mentioned Jake again, but this time she said he got her. That he understood how exhausting it was to carry everything, to always be the one holding it all together. I didn't say anything then, but something about that phrasing stuck with me. Not long after, I came across his name again. This time in a notification banner that briefly flashed on her laptop screen while she was in the shower. I hadn't been snooping. I was just walking past when I saw it. Jake. Made me think of you, smiley face. That was the whole message. My stomach dropped. It was such a simple sentence. No context. No confirmation of anything. But it hit me like a brick. Later that night, I asked her how things were going with her project. She lit up. Started talking about a presentation Jake had helped her build. How he was good with people, great at reading the room. I nodded along like I wasn't silently taking mental **TS of every word she said. I started looking for signs. Subtle ones. Her Spotify playlist had new songs I didn't recognize. Moody indie ballads about letting go, about forbidden things. Her taste had always leaned poppy, upbeat. This felt like someone else's playlist. I checked our shared Google Calendar, the one we barely used, mostly just for vet appointments and bills. Lately, she'd started blocking off time in the evenings for strategy hours or creative thinking. Same window 2 or 3 times a week. Always vague. Never mentioned. I didn't bring it up. I was collecting, not confronting. Even the way she hugged me started to change. We used to fit together without thinking, like muscle memory. But lately, she pulled away first. Or hugged at an angle. Like her body was halfway out the door even as her arms pretended otherwise. I wanted to ask her directly. I really did. But every time I looked at her, something in her eyes told me I wouldn't get the truth. Not because she was incapable of it, but because she'd already committed to the version of reality where I didn't know, and changing that would mean admitting too much. So I sat with it. I replayed conversations in my head like court testimony. I reread old texts. I even checked her email once. Just glanced. Not even digging. Just hoping. Nothing obvious there. But that made it worse somehow. It felt curated. Like someone had swept the tracks clean before I'd even realized I should be looking. The worst part? I started doubting myself. Wondering if I was going crazy. If I was turning into the suspicious husband. If maybe I was making something out of nothing. But then I'd remember the sneakers. The wine glasses. The lipstick. The towel. The missing ring. The text from Jake. None of that was nothing. Still, she carried on. So did I. We went through the motions like actors who'd rehearsed the same play too many times and forgotten why they started performing in the first place. I'd wake up next to her and wonder who she'd been dreaming about. She'd say, "Love you," with her back turned as she left for work. And I'd wonder who else she was saying it to. One night, she came home humming. Humming. She hadn't done that in years. There was this glow about her. Something quiet and satisfied. I asked how her day was. And she said, "Good. Productive. Jake had this great idea, actually." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a random crack. It was rot. Slow, deliberate rot that had been spreading under the surface for months, maybe longer. I just hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had. But I didn't want to admit what the signs were spelling out. That someone else had taken up the space I used to occupy. Not just in her schedule, but in her mind. In her laughter. In her energy. In her warmth. And now that I'd started looking backward, it all made sense. Patterns I used to ignore weren't patterns anymore. They were proof in disguise. I didn't go looking for proof. Not at first. It's weird, right? You'd think that once you feel something slipping away, once the lies start piling up and your gut won't shut up, you'd go hunting. That you'd dig, snoop, hack passwords. But for me, it wasn't about finding something. It was about not wanting to. Because once you find it, that's it. The whole thing breaks. No more pretending. No more maybe. You go from suspicious husband to the guy standing in a burning house, wondering why he ever lit the match. But the proof found me anyway. I was trying to back up some files one night. Just a boring task. Clearing out space on the external drive, sorting old photos. I'd forgotten we had a shared cloud account. Something we set up years ago when we were planning a trip to Italy. It was supposed to make syncing photos easier. We never used it much after that. Until she did. I clicked in without thinking. Just curiosity. Habit, maybe. I saw our old albums, Rome, Venice, some family get-togethers. But near the bottom, there was one I didn't recognize. Titled, October Cabin. The name hit me like a faint memory. She told me back then she was going to an overnight strategy session. Her whole department had rented a co-working space out in the woods. Very retreat-core, she joked. It was supposed to be strictly professional. I clicked. The first image was of a small wooden cabin tucked under trees. The kind with fairy lights strung across the deck. Definitely not a conference center. Not even close. Next photo, her. Wrapped in a flannel blanket. Sitting on a wooden swing. Holding a mug in both hands. The angle was int asterisk mate. Not something you'd take for Instagram. More like something you'd send to someone with the caption, "Wish you were here." Except the person taking the photo was already there. Then came the one that did it. The one that took all my doubts and ground them into dust. She was standing by the railing of a deck, smiling at the camera. Her head was tilted toward a man standing next to her, his arm around her waist like it belonged there. She was leaning in not just proximity but comfort, familiarity. They were standing like a couple. And the man? Jake. I recognized him from a photo she'd shown me once at dinner. Said he'd just joined her team. His name had been coming up more and more lately, but I never had a face to put with it until now. Now I had that face pressed up against hers, framed by pine trees and filtered sunlight. My stomach flipped. The next image? Them on a canoe. She was laughing, hair blowing in the wind, and he was paddling behind her, shirt off, sunglasses on, looking every bit like the man she used to ask me to be more like. Spontaneous, outdoorsy, relaxed. The date stamp matched the same night she told me she was at an all-hands strategy dinner. I'd ordered pizza that night, watched 2 episodes of a crime doc, and gone to bed alone thinking maybe we were finally getting back on track. She texted me, "Good night, Red Heart," around 11:30 p.m. She was probably lying beside him when she sent it. I closed the album, stared at the screen, and just sat there. No anger, no screaming, no pacing or fists slammed against walls. Just silence. Cold, undeniable clarity. This wasn't an emotional affair. This wasn't a work friend. This was a full-on, hands-on, hearts-in betrayal. I didn't need to check messages or dig through apps. The photos told the whole story. The way she looked at him, it wasn't new. It was familiar, practiced, comfortable. She'd removed her ring the night I got home, not because she needed space to think. She took it off because she had already decided to leave, at least emotionally. And maybe, just maybe, she had planned to do it sooner. Maybe Jake was supposed to be the next chapter. Maybe she thought he'd leap, that she'd land somewhere softer. But something must have gone wrong. Maybe he got cold feet. Maybe he backed out at the last second. Maybe he said the words every married person fears. "I'm not ready for this." So she came home. And instead of a dramatic ending, I got this vague in-between, this hollow middle ground where she kept one foot in the marriage and the other in whatever fantasy she'd built with him. And I, the fool, kept trying to believe the lie was reparable. But now I knew better. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. The fan in the laptop buzzed louder than it should have. The rest of the house was still. Just me, a dozen photos, and a truth that no longer cared whether or not I was ready to face it. When I finally stood up, my knees cracked. I felt old, tired, like the weight of the last year had just settled fully on my shoulders. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't say a word. She was already asleep, curled up in bed like she had nothing to hide, like the day had been just another normal day. I stood at the door for a moment, watching her. Her breathing was even. Her face looked peaceful. And all I could think was, how long have you been gone? Because whoever she was now, this version of her, wasn't the same woman I married. That woman used to light up when I walked in the room. She used to send me dumb jokes during lunch. She used to kiss me with both hands on my face like I was the only person in the world. Now she laughed at messages from Jake, hit her phone, took weekend trips to cabins. Without me, I backed away quietly and closed the guest room door behind me. Lying in bed, I thought about what proof meant. Proof didn't give you power. It didn't give you control. All it did was K*LL the part of you that still hoped. Because before the photos, there was always the what if. The possibility, no matter how small, that maybe I was just being paranoid, just insecure, just seeing ghosts. But now, there were no more ghosts, just facts. I thought about printing the photos, laying them out on the table, waiting for her to come down in the morning, still groggy, and seeing her face when she realized she was caught. But I didn't want a scene. I didn't want her tears. I didn't want apologies that only existed because I'd found the thing she thought I'd never see. I wanted something else, something quieter. I wanted to walk away before she had the chance to lie one more time, because she didn't deserve the last word. Not anymore, and I didn't need it either. The pictures were enough. I didn't leave that night. Not immediately. Could've. Lord knows I wanted to. I could have slammed the door, tossed the ring on the floor, yelled something dramatic for the sake of closure. But that wasn't what I needed. She didn't deserve a scene, and I didn't need one. I stayed one more night, not to delay anything, but to plan. To sit with the truth I now fully understood and let it settle into my bones. When I woke up the next morning, something in me had shifted. There was no more bargaining, no more mental gymnastics, no voice in my head trying to explain her behavior. There was just quiet. She made coffee like usual, offered me a sip of her chai like she always did when she was trying to be warm again. Her eyes skimmed mine, searching, I think, for something. I didn't give her anything back. Just a nod, a polite thank you, and the calm of a man who had already left in every way but physically. She didn't notice that I took the afternoon off work, or that I didn't leave my phone charging on the nightstand like I usually did, or that I spent 20 minutes in the attic sorting through boxes, looking for the things that mattered most. Birth certificate, family photos, a few old notebooks, and the watch my dad gave me before he passed. All the essentials. Nothing more. There was an old house on the edge of the city, my uncle's place, a fixer-upper he used as a hunting lodge back in the day. He passed it down in his will. We talked about renovating it once. She had dreams of turning it into an Airbnb or weekend retreat. Now it was just mine. I texted the property manager, confirmed the water and electricity were still active, and stopped by the hardware store for some basics. Cleaning supplies, tools, a spare set of locks. I didn't need much. I wasn't planning on decorating. I wasn't planning on being anyone's host. I just needed somewhere still, somewhere honest. That night I made dinner, a real one, not takeout, not frozen. I cooked her favorite pasta, the one with sun-dried tomatoes and basil cream sauce, and watched her expression closely when I set the plate down in front of her. She looked surprised, almost guilty. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly, fork clinking against the edge of her plate. "I wanted to," I replied. She took a bite, chewed slowly, looked up like she was trying to read the lines in my face. "You're being really quiet lately." "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" I shrugged. "About us. About time. About what's next." Her gaze dropped. "Yeah," she said after a pause. "I've been thinking too." I nodded, like her thoughts had anything to do with what came next. After dinner, she went upstairs, said she had a headache. She didn't ask me to follow. I didn't offer. Instead, I sat in the living room, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between my thoughts. I looked around at the furniture we'd picked out together, the couch we argued over, the rug she loved but I thought was overpriced, the photos lining the mantel. We used to look happy in those pictures. We used to be. The next morning I packed. Not everything, just what mattered. A duffel bag of clothes, a small box of keepsakes, the laptop, the watch, the wedding ring. I held it in my hand for a long time, just staring at it. Not sad, not nostalgic, just aware of the weight it no longer carried. I didn't write a note. Didn't leave a letter on the table or some poetic goodbye scribbled on the back of an old receipt. I didn't want to give her a message she could analyze or twist or cry over. She didn't need my words. She had my silence. By the time she woke up, I was gone. I made sure the house was locked, thermostat adjusted, lights off. I took the back road out of town, windows down, letting the morning air sting my face. The drive to the edge of the city took 40 minutes. I didn't listen to music. I didn't need noise, just the sound of tires on asphalt, like a ribbon unspooling behind me. When I pulled into the old gravel driveway, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Stillness. Not peace exactly, but the beginning of it. The house was just as I remembered, a little crooked, a little dusty, a lot of character. The porch creaked under my weight. The air smelled like pine and rain-soaked leaves, and inside, the furniture was mismatched and worn. But it was mine. Every scratch in the floorboards, every chip in the paint. No lies lived here. I dropped my bag in the corner, sat on the sagging old couch, and just breathed. There were no unread messages, no calendar reminders, no soft footsteps upstairs, no faint buzz of a silenced phone hiding in plain sight. Just wood air and the echo of my own thoughts. That first night I didn't sleep much, but it wasn't like before. This time I was awake because I was processing, not unraveling. There's a difference. I stared at the ceiling and let every memory come as it wanted. The cabin photos, the laughter over texts that weren't mine, the way she pulled her ring off like it was a shoelace. I let it all pass through, and then I let it go. A week passed. She didn't text, didn't call, but I saw her activity. We still had a few lingering shared accounts, a calendar, a grocery list app, an old shared Amazon login. I hadn't disabled them yet. Part of me wanted to see what she'd do. She didn't remove me. She just kept using them, adding things to the grocery list, blocking out hours in the shared calendar. Felt like she was still pretending I was there. Like if she clicked the right reminders and sent the right orders, I'd appear again. Her husband-shaped ghost. She scheduled a dentist appointment, booked a yoga retreat, added a birthday reminder for my mom. I watched her log in each day, not obsessively, just enough to see. She hadn't changed the settings, hadn't cleaned house, hadn't confronted the vacancy. It was like she didn't know how to let go. Or maybe she thought I hadn't, but I had. The house became mine quickly. I scrubbed it top to bottom, repaired the front door, replaced the locks. I unpacked the old fishing gear in the shed, found a dusty photo album in the attic. Me and my dad when I was a kid, standing knee-deep in a lake with sunburns on our necks and smiles that didn't know betrayal yet. I put that photo on the mantle. Let it be a reminder that I came from people who knew how to be steady. Each day brought a little more quiet, a little more space between thoughts of her. I didn't block her number. I didn't need to. She hadn't called. And I think that was the loudest part of all. She wasn't reaching because she didn't know how. Because reaching out meant admitting she'd bet on someone else and lost. I wasn't part of the plan anymore. And I think that broke her more than losing me ever would. I stood on the back porch that evening, drink in hand, watching the trees bend slightly in the breeze. I could have sent her a message. Could have told her I knew. That I'd seen the photos. That Jake wasn't worth it. But I didn't. I'd already said everything I needed to say the moment I walked out the door. No confrontation. No final blow-up. Just absence. And sometimes, silence is the loudest goodbye. A week passed before I heard from her. 7 full days of nothing. No calls. No "where are you?" No half-hearted attempts to explain. Just silence. I'd expected something sooner, honestly. A text, a guilt-fueled voice message, maybe even a panicked drive out to the cabin. But instead, it was radio static. She disappeared into her schedule, her world, whatever version of reality she'd cobbled together without me in it. It was strange how quiet everything became. Like when you walk into a forest and realize nature doesn't need to shout to be heard. The first message came on a Thursday, mid-morning. I was halfway through recaulking the bathroom sink when my phone buzzed. It wasn't her number I noticed first. It was the tone of the preview. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay." No punctuation. Not even a question mark. Just those 6 words, flat and impersonal, like a coworker following up after a missed meeting. I didn't respond. A few hours later came the second message. I figured you just needed space. I've been thinking too. Maybe we could talk soon? That one lingered longer on my screen. Thinking too, she'd written. Like this was mutual. Like we were both stumbling around in the same fog. As if I hadn't already found my way through it and stepped out the other side. Still, I said nothing. Silence wasn't meant to punish her. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. I had nothing left to say. On day 9, she sent a voice message. I didn't play it at first. Let it sit in the queue, hovering like some digital ghost I wasn't ready to confront. Eventually curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed play, holding the phone like it might bite. Her voice was soft, too soft, like someone trying to cry without actually doing it. I miss you. I know I shouldn't say that. I don't even know if it means anything now. But I do. The house feels empty. I keep expecting to hear your car in the driveway. I keep reaching for you in the morning. I'm sorry if I made you feel like I didn't care. I got so in my head, so wrapped up in everything. Maybe I made the wrong call. Maybe we just needed a break. Not a breakup. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. She ended it with a sigh. That was it. Not, I made a mistake. Not, I love you. Not, I hurt you and I'm sorry. Just uncertainty, hesitation, a handful of carefully chosen words to hedge her bets. She didn't want to own what she'd done. She wanted to float above it. A few days later, I got the truth. Not from her, but through someone else. A mutual acquaintance. Melissa, one of her coworkers I barely knew, sent me a **T. No context, no intro, just a single image of a group chat I'd never seen. Emily's name, a bubble of text under it, sent late one night. I thought he'd leave her. That was the plan. That was the plan. Not, I'm sorry I hurt Mark. Not, I need to fix my marriage. That was the plan. Like she'd been waiting for Jake to untangle his own life, to make room for her, and when he didn't, when he wavered or walked away, only then did she remember I existed. Only then did she look back at what she'd discarded and wonder if it was salvageable. It wasn't love she was reaching for. It was a fallback. And maybe that's what broke me the most. Not the cheating, not the lies, not even the photos. It was the timing. The way she came searching for me only after the person she bet on didn't choose her back. It wasn't a reunion she was after. It was a rescue. But I'd already saved myself. I thought back to the last few months. The late nights I'd spent wondering why she was so distant. The way she'd started to act like I was a stranger in my own home. The meditative silences that turned into digital secrecy. The strategic retreats and yoga weekends and girls' nights that never added up. And all the while she was waiting. Not for me. For him. Waiting for Jake to say the words. To light the match. To hand her the exit plan she could blame on someone else. Only he didn't. And suddenly, she was back at square one. With a husband who'd seen through the curtain and walked out before she could rewrite the ending. Her next few messages came in like a slow leak, one a day, sometimes 2. Each one more watered down than the last. I've been seeing a counselor. I want to get better. I didn't mean to let us go. I was scared. I know you probably hate me right now. I wouldn't blame you. That last one stuck with me. Because it wasn't true. I didn't hate her. Pitted her. I pitted the part of her that thought love was something that waited around like a dog at the door. That she could take off her ring and come back when it felt convenient, when her plan A fell through. She didn't come back to fix things. She came back because there was nowhere else to go. I didn't respond to any of her messages. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't want to lie. And saying anything at that point, even no, would have been a lie, because she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the version of me she thought might still be waiting. The man who would keep the porch light on. Who would set a second place at the table just in case. But that man was gone. He left the night she chose someone else. And what she didn't understand, what she never counted on, was that the silence she thought meant confusion was actually clarity. I didn't disappear out of indecision. I left because I finally knew. She thought this was a pause, a rough patch, a thing to work through. But it wasn't a pause. It was an ending. And every message she sent was proof that she still didn't get that. The day I deleted the shared calendar, I waited. Watched. Not because I hoped she'd notice, but because I knew she would. She did. That evening, a message arrived. Hey, the calendar won't sync. Did you change the settings? I didn't respond. The next morning, another. I guess you're done. I don't blame you. I just wish we could have talked. Really talked. That one almost got me. Almost. But talking wasn't the issue. Talking is what people do when there's still something left to salvage. What we had now was ashes. And you don't debate with ashes. You sweep them up and move on. She wasn't expecting me to be the one to walk away. She thought I'd stay on standby. That I'd orbit until the signal came in, the green light from Jake, or whoever came next. But what she didn't realize, what people like her never seem to, is that some men don't yell. Some men don't storm out. Some men just vanish. And leave nothing behind but silence. Her messages kept coming softer now. Nostalgic. Sometimes desperate. I never replied. I answered one call out of sheer curiosity. She spoke fast. Like she'd rehearsed. Shifting between regret and justification. She talked about timing, confusion, not knowing what she wanted. But I knew what she wanted, a safety net. Me, the man who was always there. She thought I'd wait while she wandered. Thought I'd pick up the pieces when her gamble failed. But I didn't. And Jake? He walked away too. Maybe he was never serious. Maybe she misunderstood. Either way, the bet she placed came up short. And I wasn't about to become her consolation prize. Back at the cabin, I found peace in the stillness. In my books, the crackle of the wood stove, the sound of birds at dawn. On the shelf sat a photo of me and my dad, long forgotten. In a drawer, the wedding ring she once removed to think. I took it to the river behind the house, held it for a second, then let it fall. No pain, no second thoughts, just a quiet goodbye. That night I slept better than I had in years. She had paused, hoping I'd wait, but I had finished the story without her. And that was enough.